As much as I adore the gut-wrenching tragedy seen in Batman the Animated Series, sometimes it's nice to see something completely different. While Batman was bold and brilliant, he was clearly troubled and wounded. The same could be said to a certain extent of the Robins. But there's one hero that managed to operate in Gotham City without being driven by trauma, and that's Barbara Gordon, also known as Batgirl. As is tradition, before we get to the version of Batgirl seen in Batman the Animated Series, let's look at the inspiration for the character, the original Batman comic books. The version of Batgirl that would eventually make her way to BTAS was first introduced in 1967's Detective Comics 359. It's worth noting that Barbara Gordon, daughter of Commissioner Gordon, wasn't the first person to adopt the identity of Batgirl. The first was Betty Kane, who was introduced as a potential love interest for Robin after Dr. Frederick Wortham's Seduction of the Innocent, a book about the harms comic books can cause children, called Batman and Robin stories psychologically homosexual. But that's mostly unrelated to this video. No, this Batgirl was created because of the popularity of the Batman TV show at the time, and the need for new, more diverse characters that could potentially be featured in the show. But more on that in a minute. The comic book Barbara Gordon made a Batman-inspired costume to wear to the policeman's masquerade ball, but on the way there she spotted Bruce Wayne being accosted by Killer Moth and his henchmen. With no thought for her own safety, she dived headfirst in to rescue Bruce Wayne, giving him time to slink off and switch to his alter ego of Batman. With Batman now on the scene, Killer Moth fled, leaving the Caped Crusader to interrogate the new Batgirl. So it's clear that Barbara never intended to become a hero, she just kind of fell into it. Having said that, she felt empowered by her experience and decided to give it a proper go, helping Batman and Robin to bring down Killer Moth. At times, Batgirl could be presented as a potential love interest to Batman, but for the most part she was an independent character that didn't need Batman. As I mentioned earlier, in the mid-60s Batman was going through a huge surge of popularity thanks to the Adam West starring TV series, and the comic book team were pumping out new characters that could potentially be used in the show. Batgirl is one such character. By the second season of the show, ratings had begun to fall, so to freshen things up for its third season, and hopefully attract a different audience, Batgirl was added to the roster. While the show would be cancelled in 1968, the comic book Batgirl became a headline character, getting her own backup stories and often sharing the cover with Batman. Post-Crisis on Infinite Earths, where much of DC's continuity was reset, there weren't any major changes to Batgirl's backstory, but a few huge changes were on the horizon. The first change was Barbara Gordon's retirement from superheroics after a particularly grueling case with a sexually abusive killer. Shortly afterwards, Barbara Gordon was callously shot in the spine by the Joker as part of a scheme to prove that all it takes for good people to go mad and become villains is one bad day. The greatest indignity came from the fact that she wasn't even the target of the Joker's plot, she was just a piece of the puzzle. The Joker intended to break her father, Commissioner Gordon, by harming and humiliating her. While it may not have been the Joker's intention, this was also Barbara's one bad day. But the thing about Barbara is she didn't become a costume superhero because she was driven by tragedy. She did it because she saw someone suffering and felt like she was in a position to do something about it. She would have done the same thing whether she was wearing a costume or not. And when she was robbed of her ability to walk, she could very well have fallen into despair and lamented her position in life, and no one would have blamed her. Instead, she dusted herself off, accepted her limitations, and applied herself in other ways. If she couldn't actively fight crime on the streets, then she would use her other skills. While she had intended to remove herself from the world of crime fighting, crime found its way into her life and left its mark. Barbara adopted the identity of Oracle, essentially Batman's tech support and researcher, and would one day work with the Justice League and co-found the Birds of Prey. As Oracle, Barbara was one of the most inspiring disabled characters in comic books, until that was changed following DC's New 52 initiative, but that took place after the DC animated universe had ended, so let's not dwell on that too much. So that brings us to the BTAS version of Batgirl. We first meet college student Barbara Gordon in the two-parter Heart of Steel. Barbara, along with her stuffed bear Whoopi, the true hero of Batman the Animated Series, I think you'll all agree, nonchalantly walks into Bruce Wayne's office while looking for her father after Wayne Enterprises had been robbed. Barbara's introduction is relatively slow. She doesn't just become Batgirl as soon as we meet her as she had done in the comics. Instead, we're given a couple of episodes to get to know her and see the green shoots of heroism begin to sprout. Heart of Steel revolves around a sinister artificial intelligence, Hardak, replacing prominent citizens with his robotic duplicates. Commissioner Gordon is one of their first targets, and Barbara almost immediately notices that something is off with her father. She takes her concerns to Batman, who is initially a little incredulous, but Barbara's concerns are realised when a duplicate Harvey Bullock attacks. This gives Barbara the chance to show how brave she is by helping Batman in his fight against the duplicate Bullock. At the same time, we see her compassion and concern when she thinks that she's accidentally killed the real Bullock, before the robot bursts out from under the charred skin. Batman orders Barbara to stand down after realising how serious the situation is, but Barbara won't take no for an answer. She does some detective work of her own, knowing that Bullock had been sent to Cybertron Industries by her father shortly before the attack, and sets out to get answers for herself. She's able to successfully break into Cybertron, again using her ingenuity, but gets caught by the automated security system. One criticism is that towards the end of the episode, she heroically returns to help Batman in his fight, but actually all she does is help Batman walk down a corridor. Well, if that felt a little weird to you, that's because the episode's script was too long and scenes needed to be cut. It's worth noting that in the original storyboards, Barbara had a more hands-on role defending Batman from a duplicate Batman, or at least trying to. However, this streamlined scene was still too long, and so the whole segment was cut. Fortunately, the idea would go on to be reused in the delightful episode His Silicon Soul. And if you're interested in seeing how that scene might have played out, I put together the storyboards into an animatic, which I have linked to in the info button in the top right corner and the video description. So the BTAS origin of Barbara Gordon takes the idea from the comics, that she didn't intend to be a superhero, she was just someone doing the right thing with her natural gifts, and embellishes it. She doesn't decide to become Batgirl immediately, she just tried to help her family and friends as best she could, even if it meant putting herself in harm's way. Additionally, the concept of Barbara heading to a costume party in an outfit inspired by Batman would be revisited in Batman Adventures number 12. Barbara attended a birthday party for a wealthy heiress and prevented her from being kidnapped by Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn, and stopped Catwoman from committing a robbery. Not bad for someone that wasn't even trying to be a costumed hero. Barbara's heroism would be further demonstrated in the episode I Am the Night, in which Commissioner Gordon is shot during a raid gone wrong. She diligently stands by her father's bedside, reassuring Batman that he was not at fault, despite what Bullock says. When the shooter returns to finish the job, Barbara attempts to put herself between the shooter and her father, and likely would have been shot if not for a timely ninja star from Batman. This further demonstrates her selflessness and willingness to endanger herself to save others. Barbara would return and adopt the identity of Batgirl, for real this time, in the two-parter Shadow of the Bat. In this story, Two-Face feeds information to corrupt detective Gil Mason to purge Gotham of the heads of organised crime, making him look like a super cop. As part of Two-Face's plan to take control of the gangs, he also uses Mason to falsely implicate Commissioner Gordon in a bribery case. With Gordon out of the way, it's only a matter of time before Mason is appointed the new commissioner, giving Two-Face complete control of the police as well. And he would have succeeded too were it not for plucky Barbara Gordon. Barbara was certain of her father's innocence and arranged for a rally to be held in support of him. The ultimate show of support would have been Batman, were he not too busy searching for those that framed Jim, so Barbara decided to dress up as Batman and make an appearance at the rally to help sway the citizens of Gotham. However, Gil Mason arranged for the rally to be attacked by Two-Face's henchmen, a fact he telegraphed by ducking for cover before the henchmen even opened fire and was caught on camera doing so, and Barbara intervened along with Robin. In the scuffle, Bat-Barbara was caught on camera with her hair exposed, with the press dubbing her Batgirl. Batgirl and Robin would begrudgingly cooperate and work with Batman to uncover Two-Face's plot and clear the Commissioner's name. It's important to note that at this time, Batgirl was not an official member of the Bat family. She did not start hanging out in the Batcave or work cases with Batman. Like Dick Grayson, Barbara was a college student. She had to dedicate most of her time to her studies. We'd see Batgirl one more time in BTAS in the imaginatively titled episode Batgirl Returns. After a jade statue was stolen from a museum, Batgirl teams up with Catwoman to find the culprit. Again, it's a decent episode and shows that Batgirl is a fair and impartial person with a strong sense of justice. When Robin jumps to the conclusion that Catwoman stole the statue, Batgirl stands back and considers the evidence. There's nothing that would point to Catwoman being the thief, other than the fact that the statue was cat-themed. Catwoman may be a known felon, but she was innocent of this crime and deserved the opportunity to clear her name. That doesn't mean that Batgirl's naive though. She was fully prepared for Catwoman's betrayal and was able to get the statue back. When the BTAS follow-up show, The New Batman Adventures, hit airwaves, Batgirl took a more prominent co-starring role, following an executive mandate that Batgirl and Robin needed to be included as much as possible to attract a larger share of the child market. It's interesting that Batgirl doesn't really have an episode that focuses entirely on her. Both Robin and Nightwing had at least 2 episodes that were primarily dedicated towards them, but Batgirl didn't. Yeah, there are some episodes where she features prominently, like her battle with Clayface in Holiday Nights, and the episode Girls' Night Out. Although Girls' Night Out splits the focus between Batgirl, Supergirl, Poison Ivy, Harley Quinn, and Livewire, it doesn't really tell us much about Batgirl. I have to think that it's probably because of all the Bat family members, she's the most level-headed and well-adjusted. Nightwing's episodes are mostly about his frustrations with living in Batman's shadow and wanting to be his own man, while Robin's episodes were about his impoverished upbringing and how he related to the downtrodden in Gotham City. Sure, Batgirl features in the majority of TNBA episodes, and in Old Wounds we see a flashback to when Batman revealed his identity to her and why this caused even more problems between him and Robin, but she mostly had a secondary role. The episode Over the Edge is probably the closest thing to a Batgirl-centric episode, although technically she is dead for most of it. After being exposed to the Scarecrow's fear toxin, Barbara hallucinates a world in which she is murdered by Scarecrow, leading to her father waging war on the Bat family. Seeing her loved ones come to blows is deeply troubling for her. It's her biggest fear, apparently, and so she decides to tell her father about her secret life. However, the Commissioner stops her in her tracks, telling her that he cannot know what she's about to tell him, but that he loves and supports her no matter what. I have to wonder if Jim also knows who Batman is. He probably does, but can never be told, because if he did know, he'd have to act upon that information. Anyway, it's a really touching scene and adds layers to the BTAS Commissioner Gordon as well. Outside of BTAS and TNBA, Barbara makes a brief appearance in Mystery of the Batwoman. Her absence is explained by saying she's off at college, despite the fact that she had graduated college years ago. That always made me foam at the mouth back in the day. Batgirl had a significant role in the early 2000s web cartoon series Gotham Girls, alongside Catwoman, Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy and Renee Montoya. The first 2 seasons were more light-hearted and comedic shorts set in the DCAU. My personal favourite episode was the one where Harley Quinn investigates Catwoman's missing cat. But in the 3rd season, a more serious, connected story about all the men in Gotham going missing is told. But again, Batgirl shares the spotlight. This show is a topic worth revisiting in the future though, so keep an eye out for that. I would argue that Batgirl really starts to shine in Batman Beyond. Well, not Batgirl, but Barbara Gordon. In the futuristic world of Batman Beyond, Barbara Gordon has followed in her father's footsteps by becoming the police commissioner. She's also married to the district attorney, Sam Young, and it's interesting to note that she opted to keep her maiden name rather than becoming Barbara Young. It's clear that the Gordon name carries weight in Gotham City, particularly within the police, and it is a big part of Barbara's identity. Before talking about her role in the show, I think it's worth looking at the animated film Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker. This film provides more details about the end of Barbara's time as a costume vigilante. It features a flashback to the time of the new Batman adventures, or at least a few years after the show ended, and demonstrates how the Joker ultimately destroyed the entire Bat family. This flashback acts as both the DCAU version of Death in the Family, the comic book story of how the Joker killed the second Robin, Jason Todd, but also has elements of The Killing Joke. Although in this case the person whose life is ruined is Robin rather than Batgirl. Firstly, after he was kidnapped, tortured and brainwashed by the Joker, and secondly when he kills the Joker to save Batman. Batgirl escapes the flashback physically unscathed, but the Bat family itself is completely destroyed. Batman blamed himself for the entire situation and pushed everyone away, including Barbara, becoming a recluse. So with that in mind, you can perhaps understand why Barbara is less supportive of Terry McGinnis when he becomes Batman. While she initially tolerates him, she spends much of the first 2 seasons trying to keep him at arm's length. She has first-hand knowledge of what the superhero life is like and doesn't want to be seen supporting it. And as the Commissioner, she's far more active than her father ever was. When her husband becomes the target of the deadly assassin Curare, she's hands-on the front lines, fighting to defend him. When Sam issues a law limiting the gene-altering splicing process and is attacked by a group of splicers, Barbara's right there again, fighting to defend him. She may have given up the cape and cowl decades ago, but she isn't afraid to get her hands dirty. Now there is a downside to this. In the episode Eyewitness, Spellbinder creates an illusion showing Batman murdering Mad Stan, and Barbara was too quick to dedicate all of the GCPD's resources to bringing him in. It's worth highlighting that she doesn't turn the long arm of the law on Bruce Wayne. She could quite easily have just sent her men into the Batcave and brought an end to everything, so it's clear that she does feel some loyalty towards Bruce and doesn't blame him for Terry potentially going rogue. When Spellbinder's scheme is brought to light, Barbara could scarcely believe her eyes and apologised to Batman. She wouldn't exactly endorse him, but going forward she tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. One of the things I really like about the Batman Beyond tie-in comic books was the way they referenced the events of past shows. The best example of this is Batman Beyond Volume 2, number 13, which shows the lasting repercussions of her exposure to the Scarecrow's fear toxin in Over the Edge. Every 3 to 5 years, Barbara would relapse and become crippled by anxiety, a little bit like how some people that have taken acid in the past have flashbacks to their bad trips. For Barbara, she re-experiences the terror caused by falling to her death and watching as her father wages war on Batman. Bruce had developed a treatment for her, but it takes her out of the picture for a few days and is not a cure for her condition. The damage done by the Scarecrow was permanent. When Barbara relapses during a high-profile investigation, she has to accept the new Batman's help, but she isn't exactly gracious about it. Speaking of the tie-in comics, it'd be remiss of me not to mention that fans often bring up a plot point that was casually mentioned in the show as a way of criticising the writing on Batman Beyond, and that's the idea that Bruce and Barbara had a sexual relationship at one point. This was referenced by Barbara early on in the show, and in the episode Out of the Past, when Bruce looks over photos of his past loves, there's a picture of him and Barbara looking very happy together. Some fans conflate this with 2013's Batman Beyond 2.0 comic book series, which offers a reason for Dick Grayson abandoning the Bat family for good. Bruce had got Barbara pregnant. But these comics aren't in the same continuity as the show. None of the people working on them had anything to do with the cartoon, so in my mind, they don't count. That doesn't mean that they're bad or that you should ignore them, but they are a separate continuity. And that's the broad summary of the role of Barbara Gordon across the entire DCAU. She never really intended to become a superhero, she just sort of found herself landing in that role. She wasn't like the other members of the Bat family. She was more well-rounded, less tortured, but equally driven and brilliant. Eventually she would give up the costumed life, but this didn't cause her the pain and anguish it did the other members of the Bat family. Instead, she ditched the cape and cowl for a badge and gun. Despite everything she lost along the way, all the pain and torment she saw her loved ones go through, she was able to hold firm and continue to make a difference. At the end of the day, she was able to become one of the most important people in Gotham City, and all without a single cape in sight. Okay, that's it for this week's essay. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, tell all your friends about me. You know how YouTube works. If you really enjoyed the video and have the means, please consider making use of the thanks button to send a buck or two my way, because every little helps. I offer channel memberships for $1.99 a month. This will get you early access to my weekly video essay, priority responses to your comments, members-only videos, custom emojis, and an icon on your profile indicating that you're one of my people. And special thanks to my current channel members, who are all listed on the screen right now. Next time I'm going to swing by Metropolis and take a look at the villain that came second in my recent Superman the Animated Series villain poll. We're going to be talking about Livewire. Hope to see you then.